It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name's Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Delightful.
Doing good.
Delirious.
To quote effing birds, I am a goddamn delight.
Well, in the words of Curly Howard, I'm dilapidated. Hope everybody out there is doing okay. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
I'll go.
Do you want me to move the soapbox closer?
No, I'm saving that for the show.
Okay.
Well, I've posted on Discord a couple of the shows that I've been watching and everything else, but I have to really say that last thing I watched was Shadow and Bone, and I have been so impressed with that series. It's like I can't even wait for them to get a season 2 out of this. You know when you watch a show and you get that feeling within like the first 30 minutes, this is going to be really good. It stayed that way the whole way through. Lots of twists and turns and everything else, and it really has me looking for the series of books this came from, because I don't know if I can wait till next year for season 2. But it's kind of dark. A lot of people are kind of saying it's like Game of Thrones. I haven't seen Game of Thrones, but I would say it is probably that time period, time of monsters and that kind of thing. And there's like an army of different powers. Some of them have, they can control fire, they can control air. One guy controls shadows. That's really, really dangerous, hence Shadow and Bone. But the girl, the main story is about Alina, and she's a sun summoner. But she never knew that she was a sun summoner until like 30 minutes after the show starts. She kind of finds out when everybody else found out that she can do this. So there's a fold, what they call the fold, and it was made of dark shadows, and you can't really cross the fold. You can go around it, but it takes like months to go around this. But inside the fold, there's like demons and monsters and stuff. And it has separated the country in two. And so it's kind of interesting what's happening, because it's been so long with this fold in between them that they're starting to say, well, maybe we don't need to be a part of them. They can't even get to us. So why are we still loyal to them? And kind of the uprising that comes from all of that. So it's really good. Also, there's probably, you wouldn't know it until you actually sit down and think about it, though, because it all goes really smoothly. But there's probably about 4 different stories going on within the main story. You have The Crows, which I think actually came from another book that they blended into this one by the same author. But like I said, most of the time these stories are separate, but some of the time their paths cross, and when they do, it's just kind of like, wow. I don't think I have dropped my jaws as many times watching a show as I did in this one, because it's not like gory, but there's just so many things that are like, you think you know what they're doing, and then all of a sudden here comes a twist, and you're like, wow, I did not see that coming. I totally didn't see that coming. but it's also the kind of show that I can't give too many details on because it would totally ruin the whole thing. So if you're looking for a good show, Shadow and Bone, it's on Netflix. There's only 8 episodes of this, so they really teased us really good with this one, and I'm really excited for the second season of that. I've also just finished watching Prodigal Son with, is it Tom Paine? Tom Paine's one of the main characters, but what got me into this show is because Tom Paine was Jesus on The Walking Dead. So he goes from Jesus to the son of a serial killer. It's, not a far stretch, but anyways. But yeah, that one's pretty good too. I think it was on Fox. I've been watching it on Hulu though. Actually, no, I've been watching it on HBO. HBO took the first season. The second season is on Hulu. And Fox decided they no longer want to carry the show, which I don't know why. It's really good. It's another one that kind of keeps you guessing. Is he finally going to freak out and kill somebody? And they've been shopping it around. And I think Warner Brothers has now decided that they may pick it up, which would make sense because, like I said, the first episode or the first season is already over at HBO. Why not get it back, So hopefully we'll get a third season of that. Hopefully. And here's a spoiler. So if you might want to skip the next couple of minutes on this one if you don't want to hear a spoiler about The Boys. I watch a podcast. I don't know if it's a podcast. It's on YouTube. And it's called The Wayward Winchesters. And a lot of the time it's just Jensen and Jared talking to each other, which is really cool that they can still, get together and have their little chats with their fans and stuff, although they're working on 2 different projects.
No wonder you're watching this.
Right. Well, the conversation went to Jensen's beard. And I'm okay with the beard. It's the chili bowl haircut I'm having a problem with on him. But he said, at first they were like, well, was this the result of a pandemic or, well, what's the deal here? Well, he said Kripke and him were talking. Now, Soldier Boy is supposed to be a parody of Captain America. And he kind of let it slip that him and Kripke were talking about when they find Soldier Boy, he's been locked away for so many years, which I found really interesting because in the second season, I can't remember the guy's name. He's a wonderful actor. I hate to say it. To me, he looks like Obama. Almost to a T, could be his brother. But he's also in Star Wars and stuff too. But he's the head of Voight, and he was talking to Highlander, and he said that, we've had Soldier Boy out on the front lines killing Nazis for so many years. So it kind of made it sound like, okay, he's still an active superhero that's probably going to have to come home to deal with the mess that Stormfront made because she was a Nazi. And that was a spoiler too. But
Whoops.
So what I'm thinking now, when's the last time we fought literal Nazis? Wasn't that World War II? Maybe?
Technically, I think the Nuremberg trials went on into the 50s, and there were obviously rumors of Nazis in South America into like the 60s and 70s, but I think actually technically fighting, you're talking about 1945 here.
Yeah. So it's sounding to me that he's been locked up this whole time since World War II, because he was like, well, wouldn't he have the long hair and the big beard? And Kirky was like, well, can you grow a beard? And he's like, I don't know, man. Let me see. So it kind of just came about with them two talking. But like I said, in order for him to explain the beard, he did let that part slip that Soldier Boy has not been an active superhero for quite some time when we see him. So, which from the comic book version, the way he's the wimpy cry dude, it would make sense, because if you've been locked up since World War II and you come to present day where we have electric cars and cell phones. You know, it would be a little overwhelming. So I think that's where the pussy boy is going to come into play there. It's not necessarily a strength thing, but kind of so naive to what the hell's going on in the world anymore, you know? So I'm excited. They're halfway through shooting season 3. I think we get it in the fall of this year. So far from what I've heard, it's going to be good. But yeah, and if you guys want to hear that interview, like I said, they do a thing on YouTube. It's called The Wayward Winchesters, and it's usually just them two talking. This one actually was, half of it was him and Misha talking to each other. So it's pretty good, though.
Cool. Sounds like an eventful week.
Yeah. Ish. Long holiday, you know.
Nice, peaceful, quiet, long weekend.
And I got Taco yelling again. You've already had your 5 minutes.
This is a whole new episode. What are you talking about?
I told him, I said, you're popular.
The Taco Minute.
And now a word from Taco.
That was a terrible impression of Taco. Jeez.
It was.
I just find it interesting that you named your dog after a kind of food. But anyway.
Well, the guy who gave him to us is Spanish, and he named him Flaco, which means skinny in Spanish. And it was like, you know, that's kind of body shaming the little dog, you know. So we named him Paco. And of course, you know, Paco, Dago, Blago.
There's a rhyming
Morocco.
thing happening there.
Right, it is. So, you know, it's kind of like Lacy Lou, Gacy, and, you know. I don't think we ever call our dogs what their names are. They're probably really confused.
They don't know the difference.
I think he just hears the Akko part, and he knows that's me.
It's all sound patterns. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But Dad, I'm Jesus Christ.
But I have to be careful about calling him Paco, because the guy who lives across the street from me, his name is Paco. So when Paco's running out the door, of course I can't go running down the street, Taco, Taco. So if I start yelling Paco, I don't want the guy next door thinking I'm yelling at him. So yeah, she's like, get back here, come here. Yeah.
Alrighty, so my documentary of the week. Eventually I'm going to settle on something else to do during a week, but I'm still having fun with the documentary thing. It's getting interesting finding different stuff. So the one I found that I watched this week is called Going Attractions, the definitive story of the American drive-in movie.
Oh.
This is from 2013, and it's really interesting. It goes, I mean, not surprisingly, it goes into the history of drive-in theaters in the United States. And it is admittedly a little sad, although they're very encouraging at the end. I mean, because obviously there aren't very many left. And it's not something that they're getting a whole lot of new ones opening either or anything. There's a few here and there, but they're not. It's a dying breed for sure, and has been for a while. I mean, the peak was in the late 50s, so they kind of cruised downhill steadily over the next 25 years after that. But like I said, there's a lot of interesting stories. They talk to a bunch of current and former owners of drive-in theaters and like historians and stuff, and there's a lot of interesting information in there. I will say one slightly negative thing about it. The music is kind of annoying. It is a bit too loud, and it's a bit repetitive because, strangely, there aren't that many songs about drive-in theaters. And they seem to feel the need to stick to them, even though they played them over and over again. So it is a little. That is a little. It's not a huge part of it, but like I said, they tended to mix it a little loud, so it can be a little overbearing at times. But the information and the stories that get told more than make up for it. It is very, very fun, very interesting documentary.
Oh,
I think I've seen that one, but it's been a long time. And if it's the one that I'm thinking of, yeah, it was really good. And yeah, I agree with you that the ending was rather depressing, but they try to make it hopeful as it, that there's this small group of people that's still keeping the spirit alive. But it's just, I seem to remember one being bulldozed and turned into a Walmart, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Oh, yeah, it was way more than one.
Yeah,
A lot of them got done,
yeah,
done
a lot
that
of
way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I just was like, that sounds about par for the course.
Yeah, there was
But
this
yeah,
whole segment which was a lot longer than I expected it to be, of them showing pictures of older theaters, drive-in theaters, and then the new shopping centers that were on the sites today, and it was like, wow, that went
yeah,
on a lot longer than I would have hoped.
yeah,
But yeah, it's interesting stuff.
yeah. It was a good one. It's good. Yeah.
That sounds like one I need to track down.
Yep, I found it on Tubi. Tubi
Very
has a lot of
nice.
odd stuff, so it's
Yeah.
been part of what I've been enjoying about finding documentaries is finding them on Tubi, where there's some really weird shit there. So it's almost kind of a hit or miss thing. But I've been pretty lucky so far.
It definitely has stuff that is not commonplace where you can just find it everywhere else, which is that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for my documentary of the week, somebody's probably talked about this before, but I found a documentary called The Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is probably something that everyone has heard, but people did not know what was going on. The Wrecking Crew is the studio musician group that did backups. They did instrumental parts for a lot of different groups. And what was fun about this was some of the members sitting and talking. This is a documentary done by the son of Tommy Tedesco, one of the leaders of the Wrecking Crew. He was a guitarist and was highly proficient at his craft. It was so much fun to hear them talk about the old days and how they were more or less run out because of the new groups being able to do their own music, write and produce and play their own instruments. But this one was amusing and it was informative. I highly recommend it. Just the fact that when it opens up, you have music playing, obviously, but it's music that I recognize. Some of the hits that they've done. And like I said, they have done so many. Everything from Beach Boys to the Monkees to, no, I couldn't even venture how many different groups they did backup for. So track that one down. Take a listen to it. It's good fun, and you will react. You'll go, I remember this, or I didn't know they did that type situations, and which is really good to track down. The Wrecking Crew.
Yep, that is a really good one. I've seen that one. And yeah,
And what was it on?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
What was it on?
Netflix.
Netflix. Cool.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's one of those things you kind of won't believe it, and until you see the pictures of the Billboard charts that they show.
Wow.
And I mean, there were times when from the top 40 on the Billboard charts, this group played on like half of them, and this went on for years. I mean, 10 years this went on, I think it was, maybe longer.
Even longer.
Yeah. They just, I mean, yeah, 20. I don't know. I don't remember. It's been a little while since I saw it, but yeah, I mean, like half of the chart was stuff that they played on. Totally different groups, totally different singers, but the same studio musicians playing on everything, just about. And it's really interesting. There's a lot of cool stories in that too. And a quick recommendation: if you liked The Wrecking Crew, there is another documentary called Muscle Shoals. Check that one out too.
Muscle Shoals?
Yes.
Cool.
I'll do so.
It is a similar documentary about a different group of musicians.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know we were supposed to be watching documentaries, guys.
Oh my God! Well, some of us have been talking about documentaries every week for like the last 3 months. Where have you been? Jeez.
Okay. Next week I'll have one.
Well, you're only saying that because you've run out of Prodigal Son episodes now.
You don't know that.
You're looking for something else anyway. It's cool though. That's fine.
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth.
I plead for a fifth.
Amen.
Hey, where's my fifth? Jeez.
Yeah, I don't really have much this week. I have an empty bag, so oh well.
It happens.
It happens.
Especially it's not like you don't have a lot going on or anything, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So it's excusable.
Oh well.
I
Maybe I'll have a documentary for next week. How about that?
Yeah, I'm shooting for having one.
The way
Maybe
I
two.
watch documentaries is I watch it like 15 or 20 minutes at a time throughout the week, really late at night when I should be going to sleep. That's how I manage to do it.
That's the way I've watched most of mine. Okay, just one more show and I'll really go to sleep this time.
Well, the way my sleeping schedule's been the last week or so, I probably got plenty of time to watch it, so. Oh,
Oh, like I said, watch Shadow and Bone. That one's good. It's not a documentary, but we can.
I was
lie
going to say, that's not a
right?
documentary, so I mean, what are you talking about?
It's a documentary of the Avatar. You know, Earth, Wind, Fire. Haha.
Or watch a documentary on Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, it's cut out the middleman and just watch something on
Mm-hmm.
George Clinton or something.
There you go.
Parliament. There we go.
There we go. All right, let's go ahead and get into this week's discussion. 1986 was a very interesting year in the comics industry. There was 2 miniseries. One, I guess, was classed as a maxi series that kind of turn everything around. And these books that I'm talking about, excuse me, The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. So kind of figure we would take some time out to kind of talk about these books, since I don't believe we've talked about the books per se. I think we might have discussed the comics. I mean the movies and so forth, but not the actual source material. So
we talked around them quite a bit, but
yeah.
That's because.
And I think we've cited them a few different times too.
Oh yeah.
With some of our topics,
they were somewhat influential, which may be the biggest understatement I've made on this show. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely marked the beginning of the darkness for sure, and just kept going because then in 93 they killed Superman, so they kept the theme going.
Oh, it fed into the 90s for sure.
Oh, it did. I had mentioned before the podcast that Frank Miller's kind of one of those guys that he's hit or miss. Sometimes you kind of love his work, and then sometimes you're like, man, this was a madman who wrote this, I particularly like the Batman he portrayed in The Dark Knight, which, by the way, if you don't want to collect the books or get the trades, HBO does have all 4 parts of The Dark Knight animated over there, and it's not too far off the comics. I kind of cheated and brushed up with that instead of pulling mine out. But yeah, I mean, I've read it before. Like I said, Frank Miller, I think most of the Batman collector pieces that I have are actually his Batman. For those that don't know, The Dark Knight Returns puts Batman out about 50. And he's an older guy. We see Captain Gordon. He's retiring like within a week when the storyline starts and everything. And they're fighting a group called the Mutants. But alongside of that, we also have Harvey Dent, Two-Face, who has come out of prison with his face like normal. And he's totally losing it because he's normal. And that's, I guess when you put so much into a dual personality, it would be kind of hard when they take your identity from you. And that's kind of what he was suffering from. Dark, yes. I mean, yes. Within the first couple of issues, we find out that I think it was a general is basically feeding these mutants any and every kind of firepower they want. And when Batman confronts him, he takes his gun because, he makes his appearance. Guy didn't know who was there. And he takes his gun from him. And pretty much, when he gets through talking to him, he puts it back down on his desk and tells him, well, you know what you need to do. And he walks off and the guy kills himself. Now, we're talking 80s. I mean, that was kind of, whoa. What? Batman didn't try to save him or, try to bring him to justice or, that kind of thing. He actually allowed this man to kill himself, We do see a different Batman. I hate to rag on the dude because it seems like every week here lately I have been. But if Zack Snyder was trying to capture an older Batman, he should have read Miller's work. We see a Batman who he retired. He retired right after what happened to Jason, and has pretty much been in the shadows ever since. And this, after seeing everything in the world going wrong, he's like, I can't just sit and do nothing. I do believe this is the first time we see a girl Robin. Actually in the Batman universe, not in Earth 2 or anything else. And he took her in pretty quickly, and it's pretty cool because Carrie is probably the only Robin who wasn't an orphan. So that was kind of cool. It also put Batman away from 12-year-old boys in tights, which that was pretty cool. But yeah, I had to. But we do see a Batman who's like, sometimes you have to get a little violent if you want peace, and he was tired of everything just getting worse and worse. So I think that's the Batman you should have tapped into. Watchmen, I have to admit, it's been a really long time since I've actually read the source material on Watchmen. I have seen the movie, which I've heard is nothing like the comics. But honestly, it's been so long since I read it that I couldn't tell you what was different about it. So if anyone knows about the Watchmen, feel free to step in there. But I know that it has been such a good footprint in the comic world that we've had, TV series made after it. We've had movies made after it. They tried to bring it back. I don't know how well that went or how well it was received. I guess I didn't read Watchmen when it first came out, so I wasn't dedicated to that story that I could enjoy a different story of Watchmen. Does that make sense? I wasn't really filled in on what the canon was of Watchmen,
Right,
so
yeah.
I was able to actually enjoy the other series that people really wasn't too crazy about. And did it finish? It got to the point where one book would come out and then it would be like months before another book came out.
You talking about Doomsday Clock?
Yeah.
From a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Didn't they wrap it up? I didn't really follow it, so I'm not sure, but I thought they must have.
I think they have, but I'm not sure. Les?
They completed it, yes, but it did take several months between the 6th part and the 7th part. And you can buy them now as collections.
Cool.
And that's where they were bringing the characters from Watchmen into the DC universe, because originally they were separate, far separate. The Watchmen characters were based on the characters of the Charlton comics.
Yeah.
So they were treated separately, differently, and treated very well. I thought there was a fabulous storyline.
Yeah. See, what I've read of it, I remember I liked it. I just couldn't understand some of the criticism it was receiving. But, like I said, I wasn't attached to the first story. I could probably honestly say, also, this is probably one of the Zack Snyder movies I do enjoy. And I probably was more connected to the movie than I have been the source material. So, maybe that's why I enjoyed the second series.
Well, and I think I remember there being a lot of flap about the movie, but I don't really think it was as different as the noisy people wanted us to believe. They did change some characters a little bit, and they changed the ending up quite a bit, but I don't know. I didn't think it was. I think if nothing else, they were trying to put an ending on it where Alan Moore didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that probably got some people uptight. And I'd be willing to bet that most of the people bitching about the movie didn't really understand what they were bitching about. They didn't understand the differences. They just saw that it was different and bitched, because that never happens.
Yeah, I was about to say surprise.
Right.
But isn't it crazy when you talk to comic fans and they're like, we want something different, we want something new. And as soon as they give that to them, they're like, we don't want anything different. We don't want anything new.
They want different, but they don't want different with their characters.
Well,
I mean,
I
so
think
the Watchmen
sometimes,
fans were all I mean, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed that series. That is an amazing series. It blows my mind that they handed, I mean, admittedly they were trying to keep him from doing something else with it, but they handed all that over to Alan Moore, who at the time was not super well known. I mean, he had done some stuff, but not a ton. And he had come to them and pitched some of the ideas, and they were like, yeah, but because he wanted to do them. Correct me if I'm wrong. He wanted to do it with the DC characters originally, and they were like,
Yes.
no, you are so not doing this with Batman and Superman.
right?
And so
One of your guys is a rapist. Could you imagine a DC character being a rapist?
not a good guy, no.
Right.
not
AT&T
at
would
that
blow
time.
their mind.
Right. Now it's a different story, but that's because we had this to break
Yeah.
to break the mold and to start the trend, basically. But yeah, so they said, go rip off these characters. We just bought them a few years ago and haven't done anything with them yet. So make up new names for these guys and use that. And holy cow, it worked. I mean, clearly it didn't matter what he was going to start with. He ended up with something amazing. And in true Alan Moore fashion, he's been bitter about it ever since. But there's a lot of layers to that story, really. But yeah, the original book is awesome, and you'd think people would be excited to get new stuff from their characters that they love from the Watchmen, and it's really surprising to me how cranky people get about it. I think that is also partially fed by the fact that Alan Moore himself gets cranky about it, because again, there's a lot behind all of that, but he really felt like he got screwed over. He felt like DC screwed him on that deal, and has never, ever hesitated to tell everybody about it since.
True.
Yeah.
Regardless of how true it is or how skewed his story is, whatever. I'm not judging, but yeah, he's not a happy guy just in general, which in a way explains why he can write some of the stuff he's written. I mean, some of it's just mind-blowingly dark, and usually you don't get happy, cheerful people writing that stuff, unfortunately.
No. So I was saying, isn't it kind of crazy that the dark era beginning started with Moore and Miller? Nah. Not Moore and Miller.
I know, I'm surprised. Jeez. Yeah, I don't know. Miller, I mean, I haven't run into him or anything, but he doesn't strike me as being as dark a character as Alan Moore. He certainly has certainly some dark influences in his work, but he seemed to be I hesitate to say well-adjusted person, but I don't know. Like I said, I never met the guy, but
Who? Miller's?
Frank Miller. Yeah.
Oh, no. You haven't watched a lot of interviews with Miller.
No, I have not. Like I said, I have seen some with Alan Moore, and I find it hard to believe that anybody could be that like that, but whatever.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of interviews with Moore, and I think the only reason that I have seen what I have about Miller is because he was the kind of person that was like, I don't give a fuck if you care what I'm saying or not. You know, here's the truth, you know. I don't care about your feelings. Here's the truth. And that kind of upset people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Miller was the first one who kind of rocked the boat about, these are my guys. I made these guys, you know, and he was the first one to kind of start that with, you know, I should have more control over what you do with the characters that I came up with and that I've been writing with. And at some point, he just got pissed off at the whole comic world and walked away from it, you know. So there was some very loud and vocal interviews he did before he walked away from it. I myself, I understand the passion behind the rant, you know. I understand the hurt that he had there, so I didn't necessarily view it as he was this crazy, raving lunatic or anything else. Here was a guy that you've screwed over so bad, and he's done. He's done, you know. I am glad that he came back and did some different stuff, but didn't he get into books after this instead? Because he was kind of like, I'm done with comics, you know. I'm going to go do this to where I can do this, and this is coming from me, and it's mine, you know. Which I honestly think that if you create a character and come up with its name and that kind of thing, it should be yours. It should. You should have some say in what happens to that person, you know. But when you step into a property like Batman
or Daredevil,
yeah, you don't really have a say in that. You know, this is someone they've established. Bob Kane and Bill Finger did a wonderful job establishing who Batman was and what made him tick. If anybody should have gotten the royalties or the say-so in that, it should have been them two guys. But at the time, that wasn't the way comics worked, you know. That was DC's property. I don't care, you know, I gave you a paycheck and that's what you did on my dime. I think they've gotten a little better about that as far as, you know, giving you credit and properties and that kind of thing, but they still won't fully let you go crazy with Batman. I mean, we learned that with Batwing. You can't do anything that they don't want you to do, you know? And I think that's where Miller was kind of like, you ain't going to put chains on me, you know? So, but yeah, I think that's where he gets it from. But then he kind of had that look that went with the crazy yelling, and that's what people walked away from him with, you know?
Well, yeah, you get that with Alan Moore just as much, at least.
Right.
If not more, honestly. No pun intended.
Yeah. Now, isn't it Miller's daughter who's all over Twitter defending him all the time and stuff, or is it Moore's daughter?
I think it's Moore's daughter.
Is it Moore's daughter? Okay.
See, because here's the thing. What I understand regarding Watchmen is there was supposedly a deal that after a period of time, Moore and blanking on who did the art. Dave Gibbons. We're supposed to get the characters back because after that certain point, these issues would not be printed again.
Right. They're supposed to have gone out if once they've been out of print for a certain amount of time. I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
But the problem was this was right at the beginning of the trade paperback era, and of course this book was so popular, and they just constantly keep it in print. So, and I'm sure there may be a little bit underhanded in there as well, but there's also the fact that it's still popular. So yeah, people are still going out and buying it and reading it for the first time, or buying new editions, or because they'll throw out some kind of scrap of new material. Well, this is, you know, here's concept art, or here's Alan Moore's script for this issue, and something like that. Some kind of new thing to kind of make collectors want to buy a brand new edition. So yeah, that's why he got bitter, and it only got worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I know he did not care for Doomsday. That was when I really saw the daughter defending, and she's like, he won't come out and say this, but like I said,
okay, you have to remember, Doomsday Clock was 25 years after Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was never going to like anything Watchmen related ever again by that point. Straight up.
Right.
It's just, there's just no way. Especially if somebody else is writing it, which it is, because he's damn sure not.
That's your baby, you know.
And
you made that.
Right, and you made that, and you've basically been nasty about it for the last 25 years. There's no way you're going to soften and go back and write something, especially for the publisher that you've pretty much condemned and walked away from.
Right. Well, and just it's not just Watchmen, guys, because you remember it's the same damn thing with V for Vendetta and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not just this one incident, and he's just been bitter about that since then. I mean, he
signed the same contract again 2 other times and is pissed about it. And yes, DC has had kind of questionable practices for treatment of talent for decades. I mean, I don't want to say this is not new and let the artist beware, because that ain't cool either. But I mean, it's kind of a bad situation on both sides. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm talking about how cranky Moore is. Moore's cranky anyway. He did get screwed. There's no question.
He did. Yeah.
I'm not defending DC here, but
well,
I mean,
there like lawsuits and all kinds of stuff over all this? And yeah, he did get he screwed the pooch. Yeah, he didn't get the good end of it.
He signed a contract that he either didn't understand or didn't recognize the ramifications of when he signed it. And I mean, he was, like I said, he was fairly new on the scene at the time, so it's kind of understandable. But yeah, and I mean, and the stink he raised probably did change contracts a little bit because other artists backed him up, but so it did probably make a change, but yeah, not enough to make him happy, really.
Yeah. I was watching a conversation the other day between Paul Mitty. I think Peepose was even in the conversation. And I can't remember if it was Snyder or Taylor that was also there, but they were talking about pretty much they're tired of making the buck for everybody else. The guy who just wrote, was it Hawkman? That they took it away from him when the series was below in the charts. They take it away from him and give it to somebody else. Well, now he's come out with a new series, and DC did like nothing to promote this, to advertise this, to pump it up or anything else. And Paul Mitty came in and was like, yeah, that's why I've started kickstarting my books. I am responsible for my own work. I will pump my work as much as I need to. And, and we do have a lot of artists who are going that way because a lot of, contractual issues and not owning your properties. But now I have to play devil's advocate. You're DC. I'm going to hire this kick-ass artist. I'm going to pay him. I don't know if they get paid good money, but, for DC, I'm going to pay them some good money. And, that's mine. I paid you for that. It would be like working in a daycare and wanting to take home one of the kids. You can't do that. They pay you to take care of that and to nurture it, but it's still theirs. You can't walk away and do whatever you want with it. And that's what's upsetting a lot of them now is they have no freedom. They feel stifled and, they give you a list and you have to do this and, So I think here shortly we're going to see a lot more people do that. I think it was Snyder because he just did, what was it, Nocturnia?
Nocturnia, yeah.
Yeah, that did really good on Kickstarter too.
Scott Snyder, by the way. That's what we're talking about. Just because we mentioned another Snyder an awful lot on this show.
Oh, yeah.
And so let's be clear. We're talking about Scott Snyder now.
I probably have the same love for both.
I've seen something.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I've seen somewhat similar discussions on Twitter from what you were talking about. And someone pointed out what you do is if you want to write Batman and you want to create new characters and that kind of thing, that here is a process where you basically it's like a form you fill out and that kind of stuff, to where you go, it's still my characters and I still have some kind of control and some kind of residuals or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, but then they turn around and say, well, and good luck with that, but there you go. But there's also people saying, that's why you see the same stories over and over again. Because, you don't get, which I don't believe that's true from what we've seen the last few years, but
Yeah.
if you give the same story, then you hadn't created anything new, then you're not losing anything, because you're still, it's someone else's work, and I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand that.
It's very complicated, and nobody. I mean, it's going to resonate with different people in different ways, and that's true with the creators as much as it is the fans. And I mean, it's kind of the way comics works, and at least until it doesn't anymore. And we're not there yet. I mean, are we on our way to comics actually changing in that regard? Maybe. Who knows? It's hard to tell.
I think when you have companies who have other irons in the fire, so to speak, ATT, I think comics have been put on the back burner a lot. And I think, like, the frustration we see with, Paul Mini and Snyder and stuff, I think we're going to see that a lot more, because I'm not speaking from Marvel. I'm not versed in Marvel very well, but from a DC standpoint, I think they do tie their hands a lot. And sometimes we're missing out on these great stories because they don't want to go there. They don't want to ruin the property, and, which I don't think they could ever ruin a property. You just fire the writer and get a new one on there, and people be like, okay, I'll give this a chance.
Well, they do that all the time anyway.
Right,
Well, we'll see what happens with this Warner Media Discovery group that's being spun off. We'll see what happens with that. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Will it change anything? There's no way to tell at this point.
The only way I'll know is just to wait and see. Yep. Getting back to Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen.
Right.
I was going to say, don't you love how layered the effects that these two books have had is on basically on the culture? I mean, holy cow, there's so many different ways to go with this. Anyway, go for it.
I know for sure what happened with Moore and Watchmen changed the way artists looked at their contracts, for sure.
Yep. Bring us back to the story, man.
Okay, I'm trying to. So, we're working on it.
Yep. So do you think the darkness that was added during this time have stayed in the comics?
Wow, that's a softball question.
Well, sometimes you see them rein them back in,
I think it depends on the writer. Because, sometimes the stories can be very, very dark, and then there's times where it's not so much. So I think it really depends on the writer and the story itself. So
it's your standard roller coaster path. I mean, it gets dark for a while, and then they lighten it up a little bit, and then they take it dark again, and then they lighten it up a little bit.
The only thing that's been constantly dark has been the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, with the exception of possibly the Joel Schumacher films, they weren't dark.
They weren't good.
Huh?
They weren't good.
Well, they weren't good because the scripts were horrible, but
they were a bad attempt at almost at parodying the 66 Batman.
It was basically it was basically trying to do like a modern day Adam West film. Yeah. Not saying they were successful. I don't think they were.
The world was not ready for.
Yeah.
Do that now, and you got a different story on your hands, I bet. But anyway.
Now, I could be wrong, but my opinion, I haven't seen a Batman story as dark as what Miller has given us in a very, very long time. A very, very long time. From robot suits to amnesia to whatever the hell Tom King wants to say that he did with Batman. I haven't seen that kind of Batman in a really long time.
Is that good or bad?
I kind of like a dark Batman. I mean, Batman to me has always had a very gothic feel to it. And I think that he almost needs a dark story to kind of fit that bat and gloom and orphaned parent. You know, he almost needs a dark story to fit the mindset that Batman has that drives him to do what he does.
To be
which we
Batman, basically.
Yeah, which we see a lot in The Dark Knight. We see Batman basically being hard on himself, you know, to the point where he's almost talking to another person, and this is who's driving me, and he won't let me go, and until I finish my job, you know, I'll die doing it. So I almost like a tormented Batman, you know. It gives him that fire behind him. Because when it all boils down to it, Batman is just a man with nice toys in a suit. He has to have that to get out there and take the punches and to, you know, to see the stuff that he sees. You almost have to have a dark mind to do that, you know?
Right.
I have no superpowers to fall back on, you know? It's just me.
And this story really puts him in a situation where he is really right on the edge of honestly not being able to do that shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not that much older than I am right now in that story. And he just really is on the edge of not being able to take the pounding, because it's a pounding. You don't have to read a whole lot of Batman books to understand that to do what he does, that's physical abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, he's physically abusing himself, and you get to a certain age, and man, you just don't bounce back as fast anymore. And so this book, The Dark Knight Returns, does a really good job of taking the extreme case of humanity that is Batman and pushing it right to the breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he does it psychologically as much as he does physically.
He does. And to take beatings like that, you have to be pretty dark. I mean, you can't take it personally. You know?
Right. There are a whole lot of easier ways to do what he does.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But when it all boils down to it, with all of the gloom and doom and everything that's been in Batman's life, Batman almost feels like he deserves that pain. That pain is what makes him feel, you know. He's numb everywhere else. You know, he obviously never dealt with his parents dying, you know.
Right.
His solution was to dress up as a bat, you know.
He emotionally never progressed from the age of 10 or whatever when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has to have that dark mind to continue to do what he does, which is what makes him great, because in the midst of all this self-hate and gloom and doom, he's making the world a better place. So there is some kind of brightness and justice that he sees. I see an end light, you know, but it's not for me.
But Gotham is such a dark city.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the ultimate dark underbelly of any major city in the world, of every major city in the world. And so it's a constant fight.
Yeah.
He will never run out of Gotham to fight against, because that's just not how Gotham works.
Yep. And he's always had good people surrounding him, like Gordon and Alfred and the Robins, to kind of keep him from going, pun intended, batshit crazy, you know.
We were never going to get out of this without that comment either. Never ever going to get out of this episode without that. Had to happen.
Had to happen. But that's the Batman I like. That's the Batman that I miss. And I feel as good of the writers as we've had on him, they just haven't hit that mark of, I mean, it's sad to say, he's emo. That's what Batman is. That's what makes Batman. I don't like the cheery, happy Batman, and I need to get in touch with my feelings. Screw that. Batman would laugh at you and your feelings. You know? So it's kind of sad what some of the writers have done to him.
See,
you know?
that's bullshit, and you know it, Liz. Batman never laughs.
Well, yeah, didn't that become like an alter ego of his and the whole death metal thing?
I think so, maybe.
The Batman who laughs. So, but yeah, I mean, I hate to drag one artist, but Tom King's run. I really hated what he did with Batman. And I think the Batman that I knew, especially Miller's Batman, would kick that Batman's ass and go, come on, snap out of it. No, you're not going to marry the girl that killed your parents. I mean, come on, So it's kind of, they've made him too soft to do what Batman needs to do. That, like I said, there's a part of his self-hating that goes on there that he really believes he deserves this. And when you put him in a story where he's trying to get in touch of his feelings and figure all this out, and it's like, no. Now you're just a playboy in a suit, It's kind of what they made him, so. And he never, ever would have let Catwoman do what she did to him. Just saying. He would have known a week before she wasn't going to show up and what really was going on there. People forget Batman is the world's greatest detective. That's always left out of his stories here lately. They forget he has that background, and that's what's really got him started in all of this. Is he's smart, You can't play Batman. Batman will play you.
Right.
That's the Batman I know.
If you want to grow up and write Batman for a living, do your homework. You got to go watch a shitload of noir movies.
Yeah.
To understand the mindset.
Well, and kind of go back into the beginning of Batman when it was gritty and dark, and he's throwing bad guys from helicopters, and that's the Batman.
You're never gonna get over that, are you? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, people are like, Batman doesn't kill. Well, he does. Those aren't rubber bullets flying out of his car. And even in this one here, when he goes up against the mutants, they were talking about them having shrapnel and bullets in them. So, you can't. Sometimes you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. You got to. Yeah. But to use a gun or that kind of thing, no. Batman's above that,
Explosives, yes, but a gun?
Yeah.
Oh, God, no.
Yep.
Nuke the site from orbit. See, that's what needs to happen to Gotham City right there. Just boom.
Nuke it.
Mm-hmm.
Or put it in a dome.
Oh, God.
Escape from Gotham.
Yeah, sure. Stephen King, that mofo. That'll work.
Right. Or even what Snyder did in the Army of the Dead this last series. They put boxcars all the way around it. It was like, you stay your ass in there. Block it off. It's no longer a part of the United States. We can nuke the hell out of it if we want to, because it's not,
Didn't we just talk about this movie the other day? Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Escape from New York.
Yeah. But yeah, I would love to have that Batman come back. And people are always worried about, well, Batman's got to age. No, he don't. This is comics, people. Why does he have to? Why can't you just continue with...
People don't age in soap operas. Why should they age in comic books? Jesus.
Exactly.
It's a story. People get over it. That's
part of the freedom you get with that is you can play with the timeline a little bit, because it's not... it doesn't matter.
That's what Frank Miller did. He fast-forwarded in time 20 years, and that's how he got away with this in the first place.
Yep.
Clearly
But
it works.
I don't know if it was, I don't think it was King's Run. Was it Snyder's Run who fast forwarded and put him in a robot suit? And, they almost made him geriatric because he was old. And it's like, please, Who was it? Lance Armstrong at the age of 80 was still pulling boats with his teeth? I mean, just because you get older doesn't mean you have to give up the things that you do, especially for someone like Batman who keeps in shape all the time and is constantly training and practicing, keeping his body in form. It just makes no sense. Don't do it. And if you want another Batman, sure. We have how many Earths? Go for it, but leave my Batman alone,
No, didn't we blow all of them up not too long ago, too?
I think Morrison tried, but didn't they come back with more?
Well, every time they use either the word crisis or infinite, they're usually wiping out continuity things again.
Yeah, and I think with the whole right before Rebirth with the people dying and stuff, didn't they try to say it was Earth 2 or now we're going into
Probably
Earth 5 or something like that? So it's kind of, okay.
I think
why not? Which
you
is
may,
Go ahead.
you may have different, but I think there are 3 Earths, and the third one is ruled by the crime syndicate. So the others, like Mike said, had been wiped out.
It seems like they wipe them out and then they bring them back slowly, and then they wipe them out again and then they bring them back slowly, and it's very hard to remember where in the process they are at any time.
Yeah.
I haven't
That's
finished all of Metal, but wasn't the Batman Who Laughs, wasn't he given domain over Earth Zero? Because of Earth 2 is what they were in or something like that, so they sent him to Earth Zero to kind of take over, and they had Harley like in Earth 2 who was controlling the loonies, and so yeah, they're still doing the multiverse. Which, like I said, to me, that's cool. You can have you have more liberties with a character when it's not what people consider ground zero, And I don't mind when they take those liberties. Just don't say that's my Batman.
I mean, if nothing else, the multiverse thing is at least a vaguely interesting way to blow off all of this silly continuity crap.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost sick of hearing about it's not in continuity. Well, you know what? It's a story, man. Get over it.
Yeah. Well, you can only put so many things in stone before you wind up tripping over it, Right.
I mean, if you're going to do stuff in continuity, you have to age your characters, and that's dumb. Why do you need to do that? These are not characters, these are archetypes, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just get on with it.
See, and I kind of see comic book characters as ageless, kind of like the gods and that kind of stuff were ageless. They can be hundreds of years old and still look 20,
because they're not. They're still 20 is the deal, and it doesn't matter. Okay, sure, they've done enough crap to fill 100 years. So what? This is a story. They can do this. They can do 2 different stories at once because they're just an idea. That's the whole thing. Anyway, I feel like I'm ranting and I shouldn't be.
So, have I missed a dark Batman since Miller's?
Since 1986?
Yeah, have we seen a dark Batman like we did in Miller's since? I would say the closest we got was the Black Label. I hate to mention Batwing again, but for Batman to actually think he killed Joker with his own bare hands was pretty dark for me. I loved where that story was going. But see, once again, they threw it off on the Black Label and said, well, this isn't part of Batman. Well, hell, this is the closest Batman's been to Batman in years, and now you're saying it's not. you know.
Well,
So
the
I,
thing to remember is that while Batman has always kind of been one of the darker characters, he had never been anywhere close to as dark as Miller took him in
yeah,
'86, and to to expect that to expect him to get back to that and still remain in whatever DC wants to call continuity this week, I don't think that's going to happen anyway. That may never happen.
yeah,
He has tended darker since then, just in general, whether he's gotten steadily darker or, like I said, roller coastered his way along. But yeah, the deal was the the Dark Knight Returns started the trend for sure of him being a little more gritty and a little darker, and that has influenced a lot of things in
yeah.
comics and in other stories as well, and in movies and all
It's
over the
just it.
place, culture in
Yeah.
general.
Well, like you had said earlier, I think it definitely did set the tone for movies for Batman.
Sure. I mean, the Dark Knight Returns going as dark as it did is probably how you get somebody. I'm gonna start. I almost hate this. I almost hate myself for saying this. It's how you get somebody like Tim Burton making a Batman movie 3 years later.
hmm
They knew he was going to take it dark, and that
Yeah,
was the plan because they knew it was going to sell. Because holy shit, did the Dark Knight Returns sell?
yeah.
So that's like I said, that's how that trend starts, and it has continued off and
Yeah.
on ever since. I mean, look how dark some of that shit in the '90s got. Not necessarily Batman, but other stuff.
Yeah.
The
And
only,
we go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say we do have some pretty dark comics out there right now. I
Hmm.
think I picked up a couple this weekend. yeah.
Yes, yes, you
Yeah.
did.
We're probably
Um.
going to pick a couple here in a little while too,
Yeah.
because we're funny that way.
Which to me, I like those kind of stories. I've always been a horror junkie. I like those kind of stories. But yeah, we don't see that a lot with Superman or Batman or. We almost have to get it from an indie comic.
Hmm. Because as much as they tend to sell, the corporate suits are still afraid of
hmm
doing that. It's funny.
And then you got people like Image and Scout and heck, even Behemoth now. They're like, go for it. Yeah. You want this clown slaughtering the city? Go for it. Yeah. We don't care. We'll advertise it. We'll throw it out all over the internet. We don't care. But
Oh, we care because we hope it's going to sell a bunch of copies,
hmm
and
I
sometimes it
just think they
does.
have. You can see the free reign different from the big two. You can
Hmm.
almost see the constraints that the big two put on their comic books right now.
They have less at stake
Yeah.
because if somebody comes along and ruins Batman, as unlikely as that seems to be, DC is screwed.
Yeah.
And DC, there's
Well,
an awful lot of screwed there because
but
DC's
really
pretty big.
not really. Because once again, you fire the guy and you get a new writer and you pump out your PR team with, hey, new improved Batman. He's going to stay clothed this time. We're not going to, he's no longer this guy. We're making him this guy. When you have such a big name, you can almost do anything to him. People aren't going to start hating Batman.
Well, it's harder for the corporate suits to see that than it is for you to see that.
True.
Because the corporate suits are not looking at Batman. They're not reading comics. They're looking at a
Yeah.
balance sheet.
True. The bottom line. To
Yeah.
where I see almost his image going, you do you, and we're behind you. And if you give a writer your support and you're kind of like, yay, go you, you're going to get a good story from that. Instead of someone who's like, oh, I don't know, you did this, let's take this out and let's put this in. And, then you can almost feel the frustration that the writer has behind it because that's not what they wanted to do. It's what DC wanted them to do, or Marvel wanted them to do. It's,
Well, and since we're back off the story again,
well, not really, because
you could argue that Image Comics may have come almost directly out of Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns because of all of the not comics stuff that came out of that, all of the crankiness about I made this story for your character and you're not giving me any credit for it and you're not paying me what I'm worth now. Yeah. And all of that's essentially where Image Comics came from.
Like they set it up on everything they were doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You want more royalties, we'll do that. You want a smaller leash, we'll do that.
Right, because that was like 5 or 6 people that also felt screwed over by the big two.
Yep.
At the time, and
honestly,
steamrolled.
Are the big two even the big two anymore?
Yeah.
Didn't Image get pretty close? I mean, I've seen Image beat some DC titles out in the charts.
Individual titles, yes.
Yeah.
DC puts a lot more titles out and has a significantly larger. I mean, the big two is pretty close to 70% of the market.
Yeah.
If Image on a good month hits 10%.
Do they?
Yeah. I say that. I haven't actually looked at numbers in like 2 years, but it's more that's close to the scale. I mean, you'll see DC at 36 and Marvel at 34 and then Image at 10 or 12 at most.
Yeah. So what I'm hoping will happen is now that we're getting things like Netflix and Hulu who are like, you know what? Let's take the smaller, no-name, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no expectation set up behind it. Let's make a show and see how it does. And some of these are good comic books that have kind of been overlooked that now are back on the charts because people are like, hey, wait, I want to read about that. Kind of like with me and Shadow and Bone. I want those books. Mm-hmm.
The Boys, Invincible.
Well, a perfect example I saw here recently. Exactly, Invincible. Mm-hmm. It's like the top 3 in the trades were the 3 compendiums.
Yeah.
And it has to be because of the animated series.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what were you going to say, Les?
I forget.
Sorry.
That's why you got to make Les go when he gets going, because.
Yep. Yeah, blame Liz.
Yep.
Well, I'm putting my mute button on.
Yeah, right. No, don't do that, because you'll never turn it back off.
Right, I'll forget.
Liz, it's time for your picks. Wake up.
I already gave them to you guys. Didn't you hear me?
The only version of Batman that was close to Miller, to me, was Azrael.
Yeah.
When Azrael took the cowl, he became a brute. And because of it, he was defeated. And that's when Bruce came back. So even when Batman was defeated by, well, no, wait a second. When he was defeated by Bane,
mm-hmm.
Dick took the cowl, right?
It was Azrael.
Oh, was it Azrael? Okay.
And then Bruce came back and took the cowl back, but he turned around and gave it to Dick.
Okay, yeah.
So that's how Dick got the cowl for the first time. So, yeah.
So it's been handled. Your question has been handled. There have been other versions of Batman that were not nice and sweet. And,
oh, yeah. Asbats was 90s Batman, big time.
I had forgotten about the Bane breaking his backstory. That was pretty dark.
And it wasn't just breaking his back. I mean, he wore him down.
Yeah, he broke the bat.
He broke the bat. He broke the bat mentally, and then before he did it physically. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I had forgotten about that. But I would almost say killing Jason before Miller's run was pretty dark. That was brutal. He smashed him up with a crowbar. That was. But that would be right before Miller wrote this.
That's what you get for leaving it up to the fans.
Yeah. I would hate for them to do that today.
They would never do that today.
God, I hope they don't do that. There's no telling what kind of PC crap you would read, And they all held hands and made flower chains. No.
Man, there's a My Little Pony comic, go buy that.
Well, hell, even My Little Ponies with the Transformers right now? So it's kind of like, damn.
I'm sorry, that's no big plus.
Yeah, but it's definitely different than Rainbow and Sunshine.
Oh, she ain't saying it's good. She's just saying it ain't right. Puppies and kittens and rainbows.
But I do hope to see more stories like this. I know nobody can ever compete with two amazing writers, but, and I probably don't give him enough credit. So make sure this is recorded. What's today? June 1st. I think Grant Morrison has actually come close to a dark Batman. Just because Morrison's pretty dark himself. God, he's so infuriating sometimes. Oh.
But dark doesn't make good.
Not always, no.
It has to be good as well. That's the hard part.
And that's sometimes Morrison's downfall. Just because it is dark doesn't mean it's good. That's the problem I had with Arkham Asylum. It was dark, but it just confused the hell out of me. I have ADD. I'll be the first to admit it. And for me, it was very hard to follow a story that I couldn't see. Well, not even I couldn't see because I read books all the time. But the story that you were giving me graphically was different than what you were giving me writtenly.
A story based on crazy is a hard thing to pull off. Because it's crazy.
It is.
And so you got to make it crazy. But it's still got to be a good story or it's not going to work. So if you obscure too much of the story in the crazy, you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's just a very hard thing to do.
He was spinning a good story. I just wish he would have given us that story visually too. That's part of why I enjoy the comics, is because they're not only giving you the great story, they're giving it to you visually too. You can see what they're trying to portray to you or what they're trying to get across just by the way, certain pen marks are done or whatever. When you have one story going on and a completely different visual story going on, but, layered over each other, it was just hard to follow. It was,
So you didn't care for the art of Arkham Asylum?
I did, but the two separate would have been great. But when you put them together, it was trying to mash two things that I felt didn't go together.
Two great tastes that don't taste great together.
Right. The artwork wasn't matching what the story was telling you that was going on. It was something totally different visually that you were looking at with the story going on. So that's what lost me. Because sometimes, like I said, with my ADD, it's good to have that picture there so you don't get lost. You can kind of, it keeps you following what's going on.
Well, and part of the crazy, it could be that that visual element is being intentionally misleading a little bit, and yeah, that makes it harder to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's that visual representation of crazy.
Yeah.
That makes it.
Like I said, the
tricky.
artwork was great. They did one book where I don't know if it was Morrison's book or not, but after they did it, they kind of gave you a script of what the the comic part or the written part of it was. That's the way they should have handled that book. Give you the artwork and then give you the story, But the two together was just clashing and too much for me. But I've never claimed to be the smartest person either, so and that's why he's so infuriating to me is because sometimes in his writing, and you can even say this about Miller and Moore's work too, they have this pretentious attitude behind it, kind of like, well, if you don't understand, I shouldn't, I'm not going to explain it to you kind of thing. And it's kind of like, no, you're going to have to explain this to me. You can't just give me a story and expect, oh, well, you should be smart enough to figure this out.
Right. It's not a story if I don't understand it.
Right. But when you're using idioms and, all this different kind of visual work and everything else, you're making it harder for me to understand your story. I thought I knew.
Wasn't there an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation about that? I gotta get some crickets to put into the background of this show sometimes, I swear. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
I'm replaying TV series or TV episodes. Which one?
The one where Picard gets sent to I don't remember why he got sent across the galaxy to this planet where he's stuck with this guy who's this alien who only speaks in metaphors.
That would be annoying.
And yeah, it's the whole deal is you had to figure out how to communicate with him.
Huh. Yeah, I could see that.
Right. Metaphors that he's an alien, so metaphors that Picard does not understand in any way to start with.
Right.
He has to figure it out.
Then they almost have this haughty attitude of, you should have gotten that. And I'm sorry, but then when you see a picture of Grant Morrison, you're like, oh, he's just an asshole. But he's probably a super sweet guy, but he's kind of like what they say women have resting bitch face.
Be careful. I mean, we're talking. What you're seeing is pictures in a studio.
Yes.
These are publicity headshots. I mean, don't get judgy about that because
I try not to.
Too late.
Right.
Like I said, the assumption you get from his work, and then you see a picture, you're like, he's the guy you avoid, and
anywhere, right?
Right. You don't want a conversation with him. But he's, like I said, he's probably a super sweet guy. But I'll be the first to admit some of his work just goes straight over my head. But things like Happy, I loved it. So. And a lot of the work he did for heavy metal, if it wasn't for his time that he put in there, I don't know if we would still have the heavy metal line. So I'll give him credit where it's due. He's a good guy.
And send all complaints to Liz Newman.
No,
Twitter account number.
Send that to the Faithless account. We check that every day.
Damn.
Yeah, like I said, he's probably pretty cool, but
how this became about Grant Morrison, I have no idea.
We're talking dark. He's about to say.
That's the way the show goes.
You could probably say the same thing about Alan Moore, though. He looks like he could be, Ram Zombie's father?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Just doesn't like to trim his beard. I mean, come on. What's so wrong with that? Jeez.
Absolutely nothing.
Right.
That man has made his mark,
Mm-hmm. We're still talking about him.
People who he is, and they'll be like, who the hell was Liz?
Right.
So, I'll give credit where credit's due. And no, I liked,
I'm sure that he'll be happy to hear that he got your
Your approval.
approval.
Right.
I'm
You know,
sure
Probably
doesn't
make it
matter
all better for
so
him.
much.
waiting with bated breath.
He'll be the
Like,
happiest
yeah.
guy in the world now. He'll just be holding the next time you see Alan Moore, he'll be holding a puppy and shooting a rainbow out of his ass.
Then you'll see Tom King and them standing on the side. Well, aren't you special? She likes you. Ah,
But anyway.
yeah. But no, I think we've seen some writers try to tap into that. They just haven't really tapped into that hard enough.
Yeah, and it's probably not all the writers too. So
Right. Yep.
some of
You're
them tried,
absolutely
and they've probably been shot down. And like, no, we
yeah.
want him to be happy, fun Batman now.
Yeah.
In a year when he's
Which
not selling anything, we'll talk again.
I was really, really hoping that when DC came out with their Black Label, that we would be getting those stories like that over there. Now, Black Label has released some really good stuff, but I think the intention that they started out with the Batman story, that was the first one on the Black Label, well, written for the Black Label, but they kind of, they wanted to let go so bad, but then they were like, oh, no, we can't do that, and they pulled so hard, and it was like, dude,
We've heard
you
this
know,
rant before, though.
yeah, we have.
Let's not rehash rants at this
But
point.
Black Label should have been their Dark Label.
You're still rehashing the rant.
Yeah,
You're
but
still
we're talking
going.
about
You're
the
still
dark
going.
You're still.
Would they not be part of the dark part of comics, though?
No.
Was supposed to be. But I was hoping with that label we would get more of, like, Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns over there, like that. And
It
White
hasn't
Knight
happened
wasn't
yet.
bad. I wouldn't say it was dark, though, but it wasn't bad. I liked it.
It's not considered a dark title.
Isn't it a Black Label, though?
No, man.
I thought White Knight was. I thought
No.
that's...
If they've re-released it, they may have taken it to a dark title, but even the ongoing series right now with Harley Quinn is not Black Label.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really easy to
think
control how dark your stuff is when you don't actually release anything on that sub-label. But anyway.
I think their intentions started out that way, but with the backlash they got from doing it that way, they reined it in. And now it's two DC labels. One that you may see shit in instead of bleeped out in the other. But cuss words doesn't make a story dark. Just saying.
The fuck it doesn't.
Nudity doesn't make it dark either, but, you know.
We're not rehashing that one either.
No. But in Dark Knight, the way that Frank Miller...
But we're going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Well,
no. She's trying to spin it back. I'll give her credit.
Yeah.
The way that he handled Batman being naked was probably the way they wanted it handled in the other. It was you could tell he was naked, but it was completely shadowed out, and you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't expecting an actual Wang on the page.
Right.
You know, Dark Knight
Missed
was
it.
a long time ago. They need to get over it.
Mm.
That's the deal.
Well, Dark Knight, they didn't have Batwing. That was the Black Label.
Right. They need to get over that being the gold standard. It's time to make new standards.
Yeah.
And that's hard for a corporation to do.
Yeah. And like I said, if nudity adds to the story, which that did, I don't see anything wrong with it being in a comic book. I'm not prude, you know. But yeah. Doesn't make it dark though.
Right. It shouldn't necessarily make it controversial either, but
right.
But this is America.
Mm-hmm. And it was Batman.
Mm-hmm.
in America.
In America, yeah. And I feel like we've talked more about Dark Knight because I don't know much about Watchmen. Did Watchmen have controversial moments like that, or?
Puppies and rainbows all the way through.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the movie. Like I said, I know I've read Watchmen. I could probably go dig and find it, but plus, I think when you open a comic book store, that's the first book they send you. So,
Pretty much. Which is
I
how they've
know
kept it
what
in print all
happened.
these years. But anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's dark. That was the deal, though.
They wanted it to be.
They wanted it. They wanted something. Well, I mean, they were turning him loose on it, and they kind of. I mean, what he had done for them so far was a bunch of dark stuff. So they
Yeah.
must have known what they were getting into.
I'll have to reread that one for sure.
Do take your time and read it.
Yep. Because
It's good.
my darkest story that I know of Batman, other than Dark Knight, would have to be The Killing Joke, which also came from Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wish when they redid that for the movie, they would have stuck with the story because it was so much better than the parts they changed to make it, I don't know. Because normally they knock it out of the park with their animation. Their animated is very dark. You can get, if you want the dark, gritty stories, definitely check out DC animated stuff because that's where you're going to find it nowadays. I don't know if they just forgot they had an animated department and the monkeys are running it, but it's been really good. Let the monkeys run because so far everything they've released from that has been really good. And
Right.
some very dark.
Including their version of The Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
So there we go.
Yep. Yeah, I really can't say anything I've seen from the DC animated that I haven't liked. But I'm talking more of the stuff they put out for the adults than they do for all ages. Usually the adult cartoons are amazing. I just can't say enough good about it. If that's what they were putting in the movie theaters, they definitely wouldn't be going, why are we bombing at the box office all the time? Because you're not putting your best foot forward. You've neglected them.
Yeah, we've heard this rant
still...
before, too.
Yes, you have. But that's where the dark part, I think, moved to for DC. They had a little bit more leeway over there.
Mm-hmm. They were willing to take risks because it doesn't cost as much.
Right, and they also realized that you can slap a label on it and say, hey, this isn't all ages. Don't you think they would figure that out with you could do the same thing to a comic book? Easier.
And the weird thing is that you'd probably sell more copies if you did.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
You really would. And they don't seem to understand that for some reason.
Yep.
I mean, if you want to sell a crap load of copies of a book, get it banned somewhere.
For sure. Or put it behind cardboard in a store.
Right. Just hide the cover. I mean, and it doesn't matter what's on the cover, just hide it.
Yep. And people will want it.
Right. Just get Walmart and whatever real bookstores still exist to put it behind something so people can't see it. Just make sure they know it's there.
Yep.
But hide the cover, and you're going to sell a bajillion of them.
Yep. And like I said, I really honestly think it would be easy for them to do the same thing with their comic books. You have an all ages, which DC and Marvel have done great with their all age comics, even with the novels they're putting out now. And then give us the dark line. Really give us a dark line. Don't tease us and tell us you're going to give it to us, but really give it to us. No holds barred. You know?
I don't know of much kids comics that Marvel puts out.
Well, they do the superhero friends that Scotty wrote for a while.
But that's a different publisher.
Is it? The Marble guys?
Yeah.
Isn't IDW doing those or something?
Oh, forgot they do have rights to their properties, don't they? Because then, I mean, even like Scooby-Doo with the team-ups and stuff, that's pretty cool too, and, all ages. And
Oh yeah, the DC still does it,
do
and
they?
the Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries is a good title for all ages. I've been enjoying those reads too.
And I even liked it when they teamed up Batman with the Turtles. That was a pretty interesting story. I think they've done, 3 times now?
Yeah, but that wasn't as kid friendly.
Mm-mm. No, it wasn't. Which I kind of like The Last Ronin that's out right now. That's not a kid's book, and it's really, really good. It's been really good. But I wouldn't have given it to my younger kid and said, "Here, read this. It's the Turtles. Go ninja, go ninja, go."
Yeah, the turtle story goes in the other direction from what we're talking about this evening. So
Yeah.
they took something dark and turned it into a kid's property.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hmm. Oh, and I'd also forgot he wrote V for Vendetta, which is still pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of dark,
Kinda.
especially for the time that he wrote it in. But I really think that Dark Knight hits on a lot of things that we see in general today. Just the way everybody was divided on if Batman was a terrorist or a good guy. We would if we had a Batman today, especially the way the world is divided right now, we would definitely see that. We would be seeing, oh, he's a terrorist from one side, and oh, he's a good guy from the other side, and I think a lot of the points that he hit in this comic is sadly that fiction has become reality. He was definitely ahead of his time on that. And we do live in a pretty dark world right now. The only thing he needed in that story was a pandemic, and it'd be like, boom, 2020 and 2021.
Ouch.
Yeah. But, truthfully, though, the way people are fighting about cops and stuff right now, he kind of touched on that in there. And, the whole the way people see, just one thing can be totally different to different sets of people. And,
Yep.
So, definitely enjoyed it. Like I said, if you don't have time, HBO does have that over there. And The Watchmen, the series that they did, I think there was, 2 parts to that? I haven't seen the second part, but the first part was really good. I liked the way they did that. I would be curious what Moore thought of the TV series.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up and take a break?
No, just 2 really great pieces of work that, like we said, has really laid a good foundation out there. Definitely 2 must-reads.
I don't think anybody can argue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take your time. Read them.
Yep.
All right. On that note, we will be right back with our weekly picks. And we're back. It's time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Liz.
All right. My first pick, following our dark theme, is called Bunny Mask. This is the first one in the series. It's about, I'm guessing it's a woman in a bunny mask that's been sealed in a cave. They say since before the dawn of man. but somehow Bunny Mask is connected to a young girl who was murdered by her father. So I'm kind of curious with the way they've set this up, if this is going to be the 14-year-old in the bunny mask that's going to kill people. So should be interesting. Definitely, like I said, a dark story. But yeah, we'll find out the truth behind the bunny mask.
Cool.
Have you ever noticed most of the scary things, they try to throw something cute on it, like Bunny Man, and now we have Bunny Mask?
No, you're the only one who notices that.
It's a creepy cute.
Mm-hmm.
I know better than to bring it up, so go ahead.
All righty, Mike.
Okie dokie. So my first pick is from Image Comics, and I am picking Birthright number 50. Sadly, the reason I am picking Birthright, well, okay, there are two reasons why I'm picking Birthright number 50. One, Birthright is an awesome story. And the sad part is that issue number 50 is the final issue of the series. So it seems a bit late for me to be saying go back and read these, but you know, I've been saying read Birthright for a long time, so I feel pretty good about it. It is an awesome story. I am sad to see it end, but you definitely should check it out.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm sad to see this end too, but it's been missing from the orders for so long.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Alrighty, I am next, and for my first choice, it's also from Image. It's a new series called Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton. And this is a story of Trigger Keaton is a action star, but he is not well liked. And the story is that he winds up being murdered, and his previous sidekicks team up together to try to find out who's responsible. But then again, since this was a very unlikable person, would anybody really be interested in finding out who killed him? And the synopsis also mentions something about a stuntman war. I'm not sure exactly what's... I guess they're going to be involved with something with that as well. But I thought this was kind of an interesting premise. I mean, we all know an action star that we don't particularly care for, so it would be kind of interesting kind of make that kind of comparison. And it just sounds like a very interesting, different story. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to check out.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah.
It does sound neat.
Yep. Agreed.
Alrighty, Les.
My first choice is from DC Comics. It's called Future State Gotham number 2. Hopefully you took part in reading the Future State series. In this, they had a new Batman introduced. In this issue of Gotham, they say that the countless people that died at the hands of the next Batman. In this series, Red Robin is more or less an undercover agent against the reigning police force, and he is disliked by the other Batman characters. So, just that little bit of background invites me to pick this up again, because I did read number 1 and it was impelling enough to get me to continue with the series. So I'm stepping up and getting this for sure.
May have to check that one out too.
Oh, by the way, if you're interested, the Future State series are being solicited for books, book forms, or collections. So you'll be able to read all the Batman, or next Batman, all of the Superman titles, all the Wonder Woman titles, things like that. So latch on when you can.
Handy.
Cool. Yeah.
Alrighty, Liz.
All right. I have another horror story for my second pick, and this one is called Freak Snow. They're calling it a frozen apocalypse. Golly. I could never
Easy
say
for
this
you to
word.
say.
Yeah, really.
Apocalyptic story in the spirit of Mad Max, Fallout, Borderlands meets Tarantino. So I'm definitely thinking a lot of death, a lot of blood. But it starts with our crazy guy named Bernie, who's addicted to psychedelics, and he's living in a glacial wasteland. He gets into a fight with a gunslinger, which sends him off to find the hole of truth. And it says, yeah, a mystic hole of truth that tells the truth. The only thing they can promise is a lot of death. So I can imagine you hand a psychedelic addict a gun and have him go look for a hole that's going to tell him the truth. Yeah, this one's going to be weird. I'm definitely on board for this one. There's the two writers on this. I've tried to find other things that they were credited for, and I'm not finding anything. So I'm thinking this may be their breakout title. So hopefully it does pretty good for them. I like to see new artists and writers on the, come into the comic world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Okay.
Sounds like fun.
Yep. Alrighty, Mikey.
Okie dokie. So my second book is from Scout Comics, and I'm picking Murder Hobo. It has an exclamation point and everything. So if you're not familiar with fantasy gaming, you have groups of heroic characters running around doing good deeds and saving people and all that stuff. And then occasionally you find somebody who is just kind of not that. And they're willing to just go around killing stuff and taking their loot. This is a trope that has become known as a murder hobo, and this is a collection of stuff which kind of tells some of those stories, and I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. It also is very clear about being intended for mature audiences, so there's that.
Yeah. I like it.
I do too.
For mature audiences with the title Murder Hobo, you kind of think so, but
you wouldn't have, I wasn't thinking like for small children or anything, but
But just to
like
be clear,
I said pre-show, it sounds like a musical, but okay.
Given the exclamation point, I would buy that, honestly. I think it would be interesting.
Alrighty. I am next, and for my second choice, it comes from Magnetic Press. It's entitled Brindle. And it's a story of a young woman who wakes up in a small village in the woods with no memory of who she is. Is she a fairy? Is she a witch? Or is she just a lost girl? Well, to find out the answers to these questions, she has to go out into the forest, which is apparently no one's allowed to do. So there's got to be a reason. Yeah. I'm kind of curious, and this is a hardcover, so this is a collected story. This is a complete story. This is not in serial form. So we'll get the answers. I thought it was interesting.
It does sound interesting.
That sounds cool.
It sounds real deep, and I like that.
Alrighty, Les.
My second choice is The Good Asian, #2, from Image Comics. Issue 1 was kind of a setup for life in America for the Chinese. And this is around the time of the Second World War. So in this noir setup, there has been a killing. There is a policeman, a Chinese policeman, that is trying to solve the crime. And the first issue was engrossing. This one, I would say, is going to be just the same. So stick with this one. Try it out.
Cool.
Awesome.
Nice. All right. Any particular shout-outs or mentions this week?
Don't think so.
No,
Just read the books.
definitely.
Yeah. We'll move on to regular shout-outs. First off, I want to thank Pop Goes the Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be a part of a great network of fellow podcasters. Definitely check them out. There will be a link in show notes. I also want to thank the fine men and women who make up Podern Family on Twitter, who've been kind enough to spread the word of Fellowship by retweeting our links. Recommend that you check them out as well, and the easiest way to do that is to go to Twitter and do a search, #PodernFamily. Scroll through, and whatever catches your attention, by all means, download that episode, and hopefully you have a good time listening to them. Thank you guys for your support as always. Want to thank Mandy the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. In our show notes, you can be able to check out their fine work. Thank you guys as always. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We'd love to hear from you. Any kind of feedback, question, comment, suggestion, complaint, observation, please send them our way. And there are several ways you can do that. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can go to the website and go to the About Us page, and there's a contact form you can fill out. I did not mention it earlier, but we do have a Discord. I believe it was mentioned, someone had mentioned earlier in the show. There is a invite on our homepage. You can join us. And there's a feedback channel where you can leave your feedback, of course. Or you can message us individually. There's obviously social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. And on Twitter, we are at Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us. If you'd like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at LN_Geek. I hope you got that, Mr. Moore.
I liked him.
Les,
he just looks crazy.
Les may or may not be found at Fake Les Webster. And I could be found at Tom TC Geek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you would please take a couple extra moments to rate and review our show, it would be greatly appreciated. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening.
We do appreciate you listening and hope you had a good time. Until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,